Have you ever found yourself dreaming about a big change, starting a new job, moving to a different city, or even just picking up a healthier routine, and then suddenly feeling a wave of resistance? You want the change, you believe it will make your life better, but when it comes time to act, your body feels heavy, your mind throws doubts at you, and you find yourself clinging to the familiar, even if the familiar isn't serving you. This is one of the most puzzling experiences we all share, the fear of change, even when the change is positive. Why do we sabotage ourselves when we already know what we want? That's the question we're going to explore today. We'll uncover the psychology of cognitive resistance, the brain's natural defense system against the new, and more importantly, we'll learn how to turn that resistance into fuel for growth instead of letting it trap us in the same old patterns. To understand why change feels so threatening, let's first step into the perspective of the brain itself. Your brain is not designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you safe. For most of human history, safety meant predictability. Imagine living thousands of years ago. If you knew which plants were safe to eat, which paths led to water, and which shelters kept predators out, your chances of survival were far higher than if you experimented constantly with new environments. Novelty was a risk, and risk often meant danger. Fast forward to today, and although the external threats are different, the brain is still wired with that same principle. The unknown equals potential danger. So even if the unknown is just switching careers or starting to run in the mornings, the brain reacts with a low-level alarm. Stop. Stay put. Don't rock the boat. This resistance shows up in many subtle ways. Sometimes it's anxiety, a racing heart, overthinking, or playing out worst-case scenarios in your head. Sometimes it's procrastination, telling yourself you'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow never arrives. And sometimes it's perfectionism, convincing yourself you can't make a move until everything is perfectly planned, which conveniently ensures you never make the move. These are all defense mechanisms, the brain's way of buying time and protecting you from uncertainty. Psychologists call this cognitive resistance, and it's essentially the mental immune system's attempt to keep you inside the comfort zone. The irony, of course, is that growth never happens inside the comfort zone, so the very system that evolved to protect us often becomes the main reason we feel stuck. To illustrate, think of the comfort zone as a small, dimly lit room. It may not be the most beautiful or inspiring place, but you know every corner of it. You can walk around in the dark without bumping into anything. The moment you step outside, however, it's like walking into a wide, unlit field. You don't know where the obstacles are, and your brain hates that. So it pushes you back into the little room, whispering, "At least here, nothing unexpected will happen." The problem is, that small room also keeps you trapped. Your goals, your potential, and your sense of fulfillment all live outside of it. So what can you do about this? The first step is simply to recognize that resistance is not proof that something is wrong. It's not a sign that you're weak, lazy, or incapable. It's simply your nervous system doing its job a little too well. This reframing alone is powerful. Instead of interpreting fear as a red light, stop, don't move, you can start to see it as a yellow light. Caution, this is new. It doesn't mean stop forever, it means proceed mindfully. By making this mental shift, you turn fear into information instead of a verdict. The second step is to understand how your brain exaggerates the threat of change. Neuroscientists talk about a bias called loss aversion. Your brain is wired to feel the pain of loss much more strongly than the pleasure of gain. In other words, losing $50 feels worse than gaining $50 feels good. Apply that to change. If you're thinking about leaving your stable but unfulfilling job, your brain fixates on the potential losses, the steady paycheck, the familiar routine, the security of knowing what tomorrow looks like, while downplaying the potential gains, greater satisfaction, new opportunities, better alignment with your values. The result is that change feels disproportionately risky, even when logically it's not. Recognizing this bias allows you to step back and ask, am I actually in danger, or is my brain just amplifying the possibility of loss? To counteract this, a practical tool you can use is something called micro-shifts. Instead of throwing yourself into massive changes all at once, which floods your brain with alarms, you break the change into tiny, almost laughably small steps. Want to start exercising? Instead of committing to an hour-long gym routine, start by putting on your workout shoes each morning. That's it. Once that becomes familiar, add 5 minutes of movement, then 10. This incremental approach works because it trains your nervous system to see the new behavior not as a threat, but as a manageable extension of what's already safe. Over time, those micro shifts add up to significant transformation, and you've bypassed the alarm system without triggering it. Another powerful strategy is to reframe the narrative of change itself. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" try asking, "What will I miss if I don't even try?" Our brains are good at inflating fears of action but terrible at estimating the cost of inaction. Yet in many cases, the true danger is not in trying and failing. It's in staying the same while your deeper needs go unmet. Think about relationships that drag on long past their health, jobs that drain you year after year, or dreams that wither because they're never pursued. The cost of not changing often dwarfs the temporary discomfort of making a move. By flipping the question, you remind yourself that avoidance has a price too, and sometimes that price is much heavier than risk. It also helps to borrow a perspective from philosophy. The Stoics, for example, practiced a technique called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. They would imagine in advance all the things that could go wrong, not to paralyze themselves with fear, but to prepare their minds. If you picture the possible setbacks of change before they happen, you diffuse their power to shock you. Starting a new business? Imagine that clients are slow to arrive or that you'll make mistakes. Then remind yourself, even if that happens, you can learn, adapt, and continue. By rehearsing adversity in your mind, you transform the unknown into something more familiar, and your brain becomes less reactive to it. Finally, remember that resistance often disguises itself as logic. Your mind will produce very reasonable-sounding excuses. This isn't the right time. I need to save more money first. I should wait until I feel ready. But if you examine these thoughts closely, you'll often find that ready never comes. The conditions will never be perfect. At some point, the only way forward is to act in spite of the resistance, knowing that your courage will teach your brain what safety cannot. Action is the antidote to fear, and progress itself is what convinces your nervous system to relax. So when you feel the fear of change rising, don't treat it as a sign to retreat. Treat it as a sign that you're on the edge of growth. The anxiety you feel isn't proof you're on the wrong path. It's proof you're stepping into something new, something your brain doesn't yet recognize as safe. And that's exactly where transformation happens. Another useful way to navigate resistance is to treat change like building a relationship with a new person. At first, you don't know them well, so you're cautious. You're attentive, sometimes even a little guarded. But as you spend time together, trust develops. The same applies to change. It feels threatening not because it's inherently dangerous, but because it's unfamiliar. By spending time with it in small, repeated ways, you transform the unfamiliar into the familiar. Your nervous system adapts, and what once felt intimidating becomes part of your normal life. Think about the first day at a new job. On day one, everything is overwhelming. The faces, the procedures, the systems. But by the end of the first month, you've already found a rhythm. Nothing outside of you magically changed. The environment is the same. What changed was your brain's interpretation of it. The unknown became known, and the alarm bells stopped ringing. Recognizing this can give you confidence that the anxiety you feel at the start of a change is temporary. It will ease as your brain adjusts. It's also helpful to notice the stories you tell yourself about change. Our inner dialogue has enormous power over how we experience transitions. If your story is, "I'm terrible at change, I always fail, I can't handle it," then every step forward will feel heavier, as if you're dragging that belief like a weight. But if your story is, "I'm someone who adapts, I've handled challenges before, and this discomfort is part of growth," then the same change feels lighter. Psychologists call this reappraisal, the ability to reinterpret a situation in a way that changes its emotional impact. It's not about lying to yourself or pretending change is easy. It's about choosing a frame that empowers you rather than paralyzes you. One practical exercise is to recall 3 times in your life when you went through a change and eventually adjusted. It could be starting school, moving to a new place, or learning a new skill. Write them down and remind yourself, "I've done this before. My brain knows how to adapt." This simple act of remembering past resilience can reduce the intensity of current resistance. Another key factor is how you set your expectations. Often, resistance grows because we expect change to feel good right away. We imagine that starting a new habit or making a bold decision will fill us with energy and excitement. When instead it feels awkward, tiring, or scary, we interpret that as failure. But discomfort is not failure. It's evidence that your brain is rewiring. Think about lifting weights at the gym. The discomfort in your muscles isn't proof that you're weak. It's the process of growth. The same is true for mental and emotional change. By normalizing discomfort as a natural stage, you prevent yourself from quitting too soon. There's also an important social dimension to consider. Change doesn't happen in isolation. It often challenges the expectations of people around you. If you start setting healthier boundaries, some people in your life may resist because they're used to you being endlessly available. If you decide to pursue a new career, friends or family might question whether it's safe. Their resistance can trigger your own, amplifying the fear. That's why it's crucial to surround yourself with at least 1 or 2 people who support your growth. Having a supportive voice outside of your own mind can reinforce the new narrative you're trying to build. And if that's not available, even engaging with stories of others who've embraced change through books, podcasts, or communities can remind you that resistance is universal and surmountable. At this point, you might be wondering, how do I know if my resistance is protecting me from a genuinely bad decision or just holding me back from a necessary step? This is where reflection comes in. Ask yourself, is this resistance based on clear evidence that this change will harm me, or is it just fear of the unknown? If the resistance is tied to concrete risks, like financial instability you can't currently manage, then the wise move may be to plan more carefully. But if the resistance is vague, what if I'm not good enough? What if people judge me? That's usually a signal of cognitive resistance, not actual danger. Learning to distinguish between the two helps you act wisely without letting fear dictate your choices. A useful metaphor here is that of a thermostat. Your brain has a set point of familiarity, like a thermostat has a set temperature. When you go too far outside that comfort range, alarms go off to pull you back. But just like a thermostat can be reset to a new temperature, your brain's comfort zone can be expanded. Every time you push gently beyond it, you teach your system that a new normal is possible. Over time, what once felt extreme becomes ordinary. This is how growth happens. Not in one giant leap, but in a series of small adjustments that expand your capacity for change. Another practical technique is to ritualize the beginning of change. Rituals signal to the brain that something important is happening, reducing uncertainty. This could be as simple as journaling each morning when you begin a new habit, lighting a candle before you sit down to work, or taking a short walk to mark the transition into a new routine. These small symbolic acts anchor the unfamiliar in something predictable, calming the brain's resistance. It's like telling your nervous system, don't worry, there's structure here. You're safe. It's also worth mentioning that change doesn't have to be constant or overwhelming. In fact, one of the most effective ways to build resilience to change is to deliberately seek out small, voluntary changes in everyday life. Take a different route to work, try a new food, rearrange your desk. These micro-experiments keep your brain flexible and remind it that novelty doesn't always mean danger. Over time, you build what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt without breaking when life throws bigger changes your way. Ultimately, the goal is not to eliminate fear of change, but to change your relationship with it. Fear will always be there whispering its warnings. But instead of letting it freeze you, you can learn to hear it as background noise, a signal that you're entering new territory and that growth is happening. Imagine walking into a forest at night. At first, every sound feels threatening. But the more time you spend there, the more you recognize the sounds for what they are. The wind in the trees, the movement of small animals, the natural rhythm of the environment. Change is similar. The more you step into it, the less intimidating it becomes. So why do we fear change even when we want it? Because our brains are ancient machines built to equate the unknown with danger. But with awareness, practice, and compassion for ourselves, we can reprogram that response. We can use micro-shifts, reframe our narratives, set realistic expectations, lean on supportive voices, and create rituals that transform resistance into resilience. Change then becomes not an enemy to avoid, but a teacher to embrace. And when you see fear not as a stop sign, but as a signal that growth is near, you reclaim your ability to move forward, even when your mind wants to hold you back. If this exploration helped you understand yourself a little better and gave you tools to face your own changes with more confidence, I invite you to carry it further. Like this video if it resonated with you, share it with someone who might also be struggling with change, and subscribe to Mind Unlocked. Together, we'll keep turning psychology and philosophy into practical wisdom, a toolkit for better thinking, so you can live with more clarity, resilience, and meaning.